Alright, so it's pretty clear to me that no one really knows what a rejection block is because they believe that every wick at every high and low should be a rejection block, but that's not the case. So before I get into this, you guys should probably watch ICT's rejection block video, which is in core content month 4. Uh, he goes over the basics of a rejection block, but I'll go over it again, just in case if you don't want to watch it or something. But yeah, I'll just get into it, I guess. So, in simple terms, right, you're going to be wanting to look for a long wick that forms at a high or low, which is this example right here, at a swing high or swing low. Okay, so it's a swing high or swing low is simply a 3-candle pattern, basically, with a higher or lower candle in the middle. So in this case, there's a swing high at candle 2 because there's a higher candle or a lower candle on the left, which is candle 1, and a lower candle on the right, which is candle 3. And then this would be vice versa for a bullish swing low, like this, right? And you want to be looking for a long wick to form at this swing high or swing low. Once you find this long wick, okay, your rejection block will be the highest body inside of the swing high or swing low. So that would also be candle 2 in this case. But sometimes if there's a VI that forms here, or price opens up, there's a gap, then the candle with the long wick won't always be the highest body. So there's ways to like kind of choose which price point to use. Sometimes I'll use the long wick, the candle that has a long wick, and then sometimes I'll use the highest body, but I'll like show examples and stuff later on. But the reason behind rejection blocks working is because when this wick prints, it's inefficient price delivery. So just like a fair value gap, right? How there's only one candle up, and there's no sell side or buy side, or there's no sell side delivery inside of this gap, essentially, right? That's inefficient price delivery. So the algorithm also sees these wicks kind of like a gap, just like a fair value gap, right? So these could be used as an easy draw on liquidity or an entry. And if you do end up entering on a rejection block, the reason I think it's one of the best PDAs is because of the risk to reward. If there's a swing high or swing low with a rejection block like this, the lowest possible point besides sweeping the low, right, aka turtle swooping, so this is the second best entry for RR, would be a rejection block, because in the PD array matrix, it's a swing high or low, and then the rejection block, right? So this would be your second best entry for R, and you could literally have your stop at the swing low. Bro, what am I doing? All right, so you could have your stop very tight because it shouldn't sweep this. If this rejection block will be respected, then it shouldn't sweep this swing low, right? And you can have some crazy RR plays. Okay. So getting back to this. And also, another reason why they work is because if you remove these wicks, right, according to ICT, this is where the real liquidity is resting. It's resting above these bodies. So if you were to remove this, remove all these wicks here, and you mark out the highest body, this would be the real liquidity, essentially. So the real liquidity sweep, because wicks sizes can vary. So that's why you mark out from the highest body, because that'll be the real liquidity, and that's oftentimes why rejection blocks will work. So like if you remove, that's a bad example. Where it's a trash example. This would be an okay example. Not really. Okay, well I can't find one right now, but he has examples of it in his core content. But if you were to remove these wicks and then you get a close above here, this would be essentially your real liquidity sweep, and then we would reject off of it like that, which is another reason why they work. So those are the two reasons why rejection blocks work, and why I think they're the best PDA. So now the reason why not every wick, like many people believe, is a rejection block, and why many of them fail, is for 3 reasons. Or how many reasons? Reason number 1 is because of order flow. Just like every single PDA, order flow, if you're trading against order flow, every single PDA will fail basically, except for like small retracements. But the majority of the time, if you're trading against order flow, your rejection blocks will not work, your fair value gaps will not work, your order blocks will not work. Okay, so you have to identify order flow, which is, are we breaking highs, or are we breaking lows? And are we rejecting highs, or rejecting lows? Okay, so in bearish order flow, okay, you want to be breaking below the lows. Bearish order flow, you want to be breaking the lows and rejecting the highs, aka turtle soups, rejecting the highs. And in bullish order flow, you want to be breaking the highs and rejecting the lows. Right, so as long as you trade with order flow, your win rate and the chance of your PA working are a lot higher. Okay, so number 1 is trading with order flow. Number 2 is waiting for an A plus rejection block, aka not trading every single wick. Okay, so what is an A plus rejection block? It's basically the same criteria as an order block. So an A plus order block would be a large candle, a sweeps liquidity, and displaces away, which creates an FEG. All right, so that's the criteria for an order block, and a rejection block is very similar, except instead of a large candle, it is a large wick, but not always the case, which I'll explain later. Sweeps liquidity, and displaces away. Okay. Creates an FEG. Alright, so they're very similar, and a lot of the times, if once someone sees just a long wick form, which is against order flow, which doesn't sweep any liquidity and doesn't displace away, they expect it to hold, and then when it doesn't, they just friggin' think it's trash. Okay, but it's just simply because they don't understand it. And also, another reason, or another like tip for good rejection blocks is only using rejection blocks that are recent. So using recent rejection blocks. I'll explain my logic behind this. I found this out based off my back testing and tape reading, right? That rejection blocks that instantly get tapped to tend to have are more likely to hold, basically. And the reason behind this is because if you have an old rejection block, right, that will turn into an old high or an old low, which is liquidity, basically, right? So if we had a rejection block and it was an old high or old low, it wouldn't make sense to reject off it. One, because there'd be liquidity above it, and two is because order flow likely changed by then and will absolutely destroy it, right? So you want to be trading with order flow, and you want to use recent rejection blocks that instantly get tapped into, because you wouldn't expect like a small wick or like a wick like this to completely stop price, essentially, right? So see these example of rejection blocks here, right? There's a swing low inside of this FEG, right? We form a swing low. Do we tap this one? No, we don't. We missed this one. But this one we tapped into perfectly. Well, it'd be from this wick, yeah, which we tap into perfectly, right? It displaces away. We sweep liquidity inside of an FEG, right? And it's with order flow, right? And we tap into it instantly. So this is an A+ rejection block as well, right? An example of a trash rejection block is like this one, right? There's no FEG created here. It does displace away, but there's no FEG. If you only want to be patient and wait for FEGs, then you could. But either way, even though it does displace, it's against order flow, right? So you wouldn't take this because you wouldn't expect it to completely reverse order flow of any 1 minute PDA, not just rejection block. See, but in this case, well, actually, I'll pick a better example. It's not really a good example, but when you're using the bodies versus the one with a long wick, so this would be an example of marking it off the candle with a long wick, and marking it off the body, it honestly doesn't really matter, but if the wick is like super long, then I'll use the body, right? But if it's I'll use if the wick is super long, I'll use the one with the long wick. But if it's kind of like a shorter wick, then I'll just go off the highest body, which I can't really. All right, here's kind of an example, right? This is a pretty short wick, right? So I'd rather use the body in the swing high right here instead. But for here, here's a long wick. It's pretty long, yeah, and with order flow. So I would use the candle with the long wick, even though this body's lower. But it honestly doesn't really even matter, right? Because you have a 1 tick difference, basically, or like a 2 tick difference. But it's still basically the same thing. But it's just look at this. Like if you try to short any bearish rejection block in bullish order flow, none of them will work, which is what most people do 99% of the time. See how they all get disrespected? But then if you trade with order flow, they're the best PDA. That one swept the high and these highs, so yeah. So let's get back to this. With order flow. So you want to trade with order flow, use an A+ rejection block, and you want to be using recent rejection blocks, not old ones. And my next point will be I'll just do not using rejection blocks with super long wicks. Okay, so even though you're looking for long wicks, you don't want ones with like huge wicks, because if there's one with a huge wick, like a huge FVG, right, then you would expect the whole thing to be filled essentially, right? It wouldn't really make sense for it just to hit the opening price of a swing high or low and then to not fill the rest of the wick. Okay, so like this one right here, because of how long this one is, I wouldn't use it. It's like compared to the whole body, the bodies of the candles and recent price action, I wouldn't use this wick because of how long it is, right? This one, I wouldn't use either, even though we did get a reaction off of it. I still wouldn't use it, but this wick was simply used to make a retracement in bullish order flow, right? So we're in bullish order flow. We could still react off of these PDAs to get back into a discount to then go higher, okay? But if you want to catch the whole move, then you want to trade with order flow. But if you're scalping, then these could be nice little scalps, right? So you don't want to use incredibly long wicks, in my opinion, like from news or opens or anything, just because they'll likely get filled. Like they'll likely fully get filled. And like this is an example right here, right? A super long wick and it's an old low, right? So you wouldn't expect this to hold because order flow changed by then, right? We're breaking lows, rejecting highs. And this wick is super long, so we expect this whole thing to be filled essentially. And it wouldn't make sense for this to continue higher because order flow has already changed, right? And this could be used as liquidity and these lows down here. So you don't use long wicks, right? Don't use rejection, or don't use long wicks. Don't use old rejection blocks. Wait for an A+ one, right? Which is a recent rejection block. I'll just add this onto here. Recent rejection block. You want to use new rejection blocks. You want to trade with order flow. So that's basically it. So I'll just go over some of these Twitter examples, right, of why these ones worked and why your rejection blocks are probably trash. Okay, so this is on one of these examples. Let's move it up here. Right, this is the 15-minute time frame, and this is the 1-minute time frame. Same trade, I think. Wait. Oh wait, no, this one was this one. Yeah. Okay, I was gonna say. So this trade right here, there was a seek and destroy happening, right? So I didn't since there was a seek and destroy happening, right? I wouldn't want this wick to be left because of all the chop. We're likely to chop down first and then expand to this FEG higher, right? So you wouldn't really want to hold long, or you shouldn't even be trading this in the first place, right? But the only reasonable place for price to go and manipulate to would be this wick here, which was a 15-minute wick on the 15-minute time frame, I'm pretty sure, because this FEG stays unfilled, we already tapped into this FEG, right? And this was the 15-minute wick right here. So this would be the only logical place to go, right? There's no other PDAs in here, or there's really none. There's no reason to go below this low. So the only logical place to manipulate to before this move up would be this rejection block, which is why I shorted this rejection block here, because it swept liquidity and it displaced lower, right? And so we tap into it, and then that is the manipulation. So this is trading the manipulation, right, down into this 15-minute rejection block. So you're trading this retracement here. This rejection block is used to retrace back into this leg to then displace higher, because this is the draw on liquidity, right? If you're trading against the draw on liquidity, you want to target PDAs, not highs and lows. If you're trading with the draw on liquidity, then you can target highs and lows or other PDAs. But essentially, you target the wick, you can long here, or you wait for this reaction off of it, and then boom, hit the draw. So that one's pretty easy. This other example, this is the 15-minute time frame. So this is what the 15-minute time frame looked like. Okay. We didn't really get it. Well, we did get a displacement off it, but it doesn't really look like it. On the 1 minute we did. But we're inside of this FEG, right, in bullish order flow. So we're expecting to go to this high because we're inside this 15-minute FEG, right? We're inside of a higher time frame PDA, which is also a lower time frame market maker buy model. Okay. So if you look right here, we tap into the PDA down here, and this line right here, the rejection block, which is the lowest body in the swing low right here, right? And the reason I use this one, even though this one is longer, is because you're essentially like cutting through this candle if you were to mark from here, right? So in this case, I would just mark out from the swing, the lowest body, because this long wick candle is behind this candle, basically, right? So you don't want anything to be in the way of your rejection block, basically, right? So I use this as the rejection block, which is this line right here, not the turtle soup, or yeah, it was this move up right here. We ended up turtle souping it, but this move up right here was the rejection block. Okay, so we displaced away from it, swept liquidity inside of a market maker buy model, right? And we manipulate down into this rejection block. So that's an easy long right there. And since we went below it again, I knew it was a turtle soup because it wouldn't make sense to go below this, right? And there was really no PDA here as well, right? This was already repriced too, right? So it wouldn't really make sense for it to go lower. If the draw on liquidity is higher, this would be the last resort, basically, to go to the high, right? Or else it'd be going lower because there's really no PDA to support higher. And we're inside of a market maker buy model, right? So that's a easy long right there, inside of a higher time frame rejection block. And then this last example. Right here. So even though we don't get a large displacement away from this rejection block, it was mainly because of how obvious the draw on liquidity was. There was a 1 hour FEG, right? And we were just shy of it right here. So this was clearly used to engineer liquidity right here, right? We create failure swings inside of bearish order flow. We create a large candle up to this high. So this is obvious manipulation into a high, right? So that's an easy turtle soup right there. And then we displace lower a little, not huge displacement, right? But it's been pretty choppy, so I wouldn't really expect a huge displacement. But this was mainly because of how obvious the draw was, so you don't really need a huge displacement here, right? So we pump back into this wick to essentially fill it in, this inefficient price delivery. And then we sell off again, and we respect this FEG turtle soup. Yeah. Well, I thought there was 2 rejection blocks for some reason, but there's not. And then this would be, since there's no PDA that really formed in here, right? And we just tapped into this hourly FEG. The only thing that would prevent this from going higher, price from going higher past this high, is this rejection block basically, right? So there's a lower candle here, highest candle here, and a lower candle here, right? So this is your rejection block. Even though it's not a long wick, that's really the only PDA you have to work with inside of these candles, right? So we reject off of it a little, end up tapping into this rejection block right here, and we retrace a little higher up to like this high, I believe. But that's like another example of how you can still trade the retracements off this rejection block, basically. So that was the last condition before going higher, essentially, and we broke it. So that's why I placed my stop there, because it shouldn't go higher than that. There's really no reason to go higher than that. And that's all the examples I'll just do for now. But the main reason, honestly, behind why most rejection blocks don't work is because you're trading against order flow, basically. So order flow is the biggest key factor probably to this. Waiting for A plus rejection block, yeah, definitely the second best. And then using recent rejection blocks is more of just like a small feature, kind of. It's not really needed, but it's just something I spotted from just backtesting it done, and not using long wicks because they likely get filled most of the time, which is something I also spotted. But both of those aren't really needed as much. Order flow should be your number one priority. Essentially, if you trade with order flow, your PDAs will be respected a lot more, even though if they're not A++, they'll just be respected a lot more. And that's basically it. Hopefully more people start using rejection blocks, because everyone thinks they're retarded or something, but they're literally one of the best PDAs in my opinion, because they have a logic behind it, and they give you the best R, unlike the freaking, I don't know, Medusa or Reaper. They aren't as logical as a rejection block. And that's basically it.